Hello and welcome. So this is one of my 60 conversations. And oh my gosh, yes, I've had so many amazing conversations. And today I have the lovely Dean Rees-Evans with me, which I'm really, really thrilled about. I don't know loads and loads and loads about you, but I feel like I have known you for a very long time. I feel like you were in the UK and then you disappeared somewhere, so I didn't see you. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about you and let's just see where this conversation goes.
Okay, well, would you like me to tell you where it all started?
Why not? That seems like
Yeah,
it. Start at the very beginning.
start at the beginning.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, well, it was April of 2004. Let's go back a little bit before that. So before that, I'm a high school teacher, and my brother came to me one day and he said, "Look, I've heard about this woman, and she's creating a new curriculum, school curriculum, high school curriculum." I said, "Oh, really? Well, what's it going to be based on?" He said, "Common sense and wisdom." I went, "Wow, that sounds fantastic. I've got to meet this woman." So she came to our hometown and gave a talk. And okay, English was her second language. She was African. It
Mm.
wasn't the language barrier that there was a problem. I just hadn't got a single clue what she was talking about. And as is so often the case when people first come across the principles, just like, what? Anyway, she spoke. I had no idea what she was talking about. And then she showed a little bit of footage of Roger Mills. Now that made sense to me. Listening to him talk, something clicked inside me. I thought, I've got to meet this man. So it turns out that she had engaged Roger to come to the UK and do a 4-day program. So he came. Now, I missed the first 2 days of a 4-day program. So this is how close I came to not even coming across the principles. So I missed the first 2 days because I was at school and I really didn't feel like I could take 2 days off. So on the Friday, I got home from school and I thought, wow, it's pretty close now. So they'll be finishing for the day. I could get changed and then jump on the train and go into London and go out for a meal with them all and then ask Roger some questions. And I thought to myself, I'm not sure that's such a good idea. He's been working for 2 days and now you're going to go and sit in a restaurant with him and pick his brains. I don't think that's going to work. So I thought, right. Okay, I better go somewhere else. So I rang my brother's girlfriend at the time, and because she was there on the program, and I said, "Look, I'd really like to come up for the last 2 days. Can you see if you can arrange that?" So she spoke to the organizer. The organizer spoke to Roger. Roger was not happy. Who is this guy? Just turning up 2 days late, and he'll just have all these awkward questions. And he said he can come on one condition. And that condition was I turn up early on the Saturday morning and he'll run me through some of the stuff he'd spoken about. And then I was to just sit down and be quiet.
Oh, I'm
I
not sure I can do that.
I was almost good at it. I almost pulled that off. So I agreed. And of course, my brother's girlfriend, she said, "Oh, yeah, he'll do that. He'll do that." So went in early the next morning, met Roger. I don't know what he said. I can't remember. Anyway, we had this brief catch up. And then he said, "Okay, just go and sit down and relax." So the day went on and Roger spoke. And again, I couldn't tell you a single thing he said all weekend, but what I can remember is how I felt. And that was the most curious thing of all, because I, by lunchtime of the first day for me, so the third day for everyone else, I felt physically hollow. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. So we're sitting there having lunch. My brother's girlfriend was sitting opposite me, and she said, "Yeah, I feel the same, but it's scaring me. I don't like this feeling." And I thought, well, all I could think of, having been up until that point in my life a practicing Buddhist for 14 years, I thought, well, the Buddha spoke about the shunyata, which is the great emptiness. And I thought, well, I'm feeling pretty empty. So maybe this is the shunyata. I'm thinking, whoa, this is fantastic. So I got pretty excited. And the end of the day, again, we had a lovely afternoon and then we went home. I'll never forget the date because it was a friend's 40th birthday. So we went out in the evening to this party, had a nice time, and then went back to London again the following day. Now, when I woke up in the morning, something really strange had happened. So when we get to London, we're sitting down, everyone's had a cup of tea, and we're all sitting there waiting. And Roger said, look, before we start, has anybody got anything they'd like to share or any questions? And my hand shot up and he said, yeah, Dean, what is it? I said, I thought that I had a pretty quiet mind after, many, many years of meditation. I said, but I've woken up this morning and it feels like someone's flipped a switch in my head and it's all gone quiet. It's empty. It's like, so feeling physically hollow. My mind's completely empty. That's what it feels like. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? He didn't say anything. He just looked at me and laughed and then carried on with the morning. Now, come break time, everyone else had gone to get a drink, and I just walked up to Roger and I suddenly had this huge moment where I said, Roger, this is the solution to all the world's problems, isn't it? And he looked at me and he said, yeah. He said, it's the only solution because all the problems in the world begin in the minds of humans, and therefore that's where the answer lies. And I knew without a single doubt, and I haven't had a single doubt in coming on 25 years now, 21 years now, that I knew that the only thing I wanted to do for the rest of my life was share what I had seen, because I knew it was the most valuable thing I'd ever experienced. And therefore, who else could not benefit from this? So come to the end of the day, I was in the kitchen. I love washing up, right? I love washing up and cleaning. And I'm in the kitchen helping out. I know, a very unusual trait in men, apparently. And I'm in the kitchen cleaning up, and this woman walked in, and she wasn't on the train. She was a friend of the organizer. And we introduced ourselves, and she said, oh, she said, you're Dean. Oh, you're really important, aren't you? I just looked around thinking, she's talking about me. And I said, no. And I started laughing, and I just said, no, I'm just really ordinary, because that was the insight that I had, was that, oh my God, I've been let off the hook. I don't have to be anyone. I don't have to be anything. I didn't know I was thinking I needed to be someone or something. But suddenly I realized I didn't need any of that. And it just felt so ordinary. It was just blissful. She was a bit puzzled by that, I think. But anyway, that's by the by. Well, the next day, so it's all over. I've gone home. I've slept. I've had a good night's sleep. I've had my breakfast, and I'm standing in the kitchen washing up something really ordinary, just washing up in the kitchen sink. And suddenly I started to laugh. I said always called this cosmic humor. And we've all experienced it. It doesn't matter whether you've heard about the principles or not. Everyone has had a belly laugh for nothing or for an old memory, and you just can't stop. Well, I couldn't stop laughing. And I'm in the kitchen on my own. Nobody's told a joke. And I haven't had a memory of anything, just I'm still feeling quite empty. And I start to laugh and I can't stop. And I'm laughing and laughing. I'm laughing so hard that, the tears are coming down my face. My belly's hurting, so I'm holding onto the sink so I don't fall over. And the only thing that flashed through my mind in that moment was a book that I'd read called Iron John by Robert Bly, which is a book about, I guess, positive masculinity. He's just trying to point. There's plenty of books written about feminism. There are very few books written about masculinity and what that really means. Yeah. And in this book, he said that as we get older, we have all of these psychological experiences throughout our lives, and we collect them up and we put them in a big sack, and we carry that sack around with us everywhere we go. And of course, the older we get, the heavier the sack gets. And that's why old people look so bowed over, because they're carrying a really heavy sack full of all of these psychological experiences. And what went through my mind in that moment was someone had just took a real sharp knife and they'd swiped the bottom of the bag, and it was all pouring out. And I had to hold on for dear life to keep myself upright. And I just laughed it all out of my bag.
I love it.
I even got on the phone to the organizer to try and talk to her, like, what is happening to me? Well, I couldn't speak. could I? I couldn't stop laughing. So I'm laughing and she's laughing. And in the end, I just said, look, I'm going to have to go. I've got to go to school. So I'll call you later. And I think I drove to school that day and I walked into school and I knew from that moment onwards that my life would never be the same again. Like everything had changed. And my relationship with the children changed. Their relationship to me changed. It was just walking in magic, walking in fairyland. It was just, and that went on for months. That feeling just, I felt like, well, there were two things. One, I felt like Superman because every difficult experience that happened to me just bounced off like I'm bulletproof. And the other thing I thought was, oh my God, I'm a liar because Roger had told us in no uncertain terms, he said, no one is ever happy all of the time. So if you ever meet someone and they say, yeah, yeah, I'm always happy, they're lying. And I thought, oh my God, I'm lying to the world. Because that's what it felt like. It felt like for at least 4 months, I floated on a cloud. And it's not like life didn't throw curveballs at me. Life never stops doing that, but they just bounced off me. I remember one time, again, I'd had my earpiece in and I was driving to school and I was talking to the organizer, a woman called Margaret Apio. And I'd just broken up from quite a new relationship. And I was telling her about it. And then I was laughing. And she said, Dean, this is pretty irregular. When you break up with someone, normally you're upset. And well, what's funny about it? And I said, look, all I can feel is that if she's gone back to her ex-partner, that must be for everybody's benefit. It must be the best thing she needs to do. So it was a wonderful time. Well, it still is a wonderful time. But that was the beginning.
Wow.
Pretty exciting.
What a beautiful beginning. What a
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, thank you for
yeah.
sharing.
No, my pleasure. And of course, Roger and I, well, not be, of course, but Roger and I did become really good friends, and that was a real blessing in my life. He was such a beautiful human being. I wish that more people could have met him, but you know,
Tell
you
us
can't
about,
wish for such things.
tell us something about Roger and that and yeah, because I never I obviously I know of Roger.
Yeah,
Yes, and I know he came over to the UK obviously and was huge in helping to bring this understanding over here, but I never got to meet him, never knew him. So
yeah.
what did you see in him? What
Probably the biggest heart I've ever come across. He was just like one big ball of love. Um, you couldn't be in a room with him without feeling that love and without having a damn good laugh. He just would not let things get serious. It was impossible for people to stay in what he quaintly termed seriosity. Right?
I love it.
Yeah. Sometimes he would look at an audience because when he came, I just literally went to everything. He'd give public talks. He'd run what he called core courses, which is a general basic introduction to the principles over 2 days. And then he ran the facilitator training for a bunch of us.
Mm.
I never once had an audience manage to get him one over him. Like he was always so kind and so gentle and so loving, but he just would not let the room get serious. He just had a magic way of stopping that. Like if we were in the middle of training and it got too intellectual, he'd just say, oh, okay, I think it's time for a cup of tea. And then break the feeling and then come back and he would start off with something really beautiful again and engage people at a heart level again rather than getting anywhere near the intellect. Because it's the habit that most of us have gotten into because of our education system. It's what we're taught. Use the intellect. Use the intellect to solve problems. Well, it's not very good at that, I'm afraid. Not good at lots of things, but it's not very good at solving the mysteries of life.
Mm. So
So he became, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, carry on.
He became a really good friend. And I remember him saying one day, he said, you know, Dean, he said, I fall in love every single day. And now I really, really, really know what he means. You know, I've seen that so many times. I remember being on I'll tell you a couple of stories. So during this year that we trained with him, there was so many wonderful experiences. And often they were, as he often suggested, they take place outside formal training, outside of any discussion about the principles. They just happen in our everyday lives. So one time I'm on the tube, and if you've been through London, everyone who's been through London knows what it's like in peak hour. It's like you're jammed in like sardines in a can, and it's not always pleasant. Sometimes it's nice, you know. And I started to notice, you know, when a mother or a father has the baby on their shoulder, you know, the
Mm.
sort of keep the baby's looking that way, right?
Yeah.
The first time I saw this, I thought this is amazing. So a child will look, and they look, and what are they seeing? Well, they're still so close to the source. They see the magic around them, which we've stopped seeing because we've gotten caught up in our intellect. So there's this mother, and she's rocking the baby, and the baby's eyes are locked into mine. And everywhere she moves, the baby's head's just going like this to make sure that we keep eye contact. I said to Roger, I said, this is amazing. And he said, it's big, it's happening to you too. So these were all things obviously he'd experienced. And yeah, somehow in the magic alchemy of consciousness, he somehow passed that on. And it's just like you suddenly notice there's all this beauty and all this magic everywhere you go. Well, another time, and this is probably one of the most magical moments of my entire life. We were on the tube. I think my brother was sitting next to me, and then his girlfriend, and then a couple of others who were all going to the training. And the train pulled into a station, and this elderly Sikh couple got on, and the woman was wearing this beautiful sari, and the man, an elderly man with a big white beard, had this beautiful sky blue turban on. I thought, wow, it's beautiful. And I said good morning to them, and the woman sort of looked very demure. She looked down and but nodded, and he just looked at me right in the eyes and said, "Good morning." And then we looked at each other, and we just kept looking at each other, eyes to eyes. And we sat there, and we sat there, and we sat there, and I just could feel just filling up with love. And at one point, he just looked at me, and so typical of Indians, he put his hands together, and then he did this sort of little head wobble. And I did the same because I'd been a Buddhist, practicing Buddhist for 14 years then. I was used to that salutation. And again, we knew both in that moment we were connected because all things are connected in the great oneness. And we sat there until Dean, it's time to get off the train. My brother's nudging me, but I'm having this experience. So I get up, I get off the train, and I stand on the platform, and we're still looking at each other. And he just does the same again. He puts his hands together in this magic moment that will stay with me for the rest of my life. Just pure love, pure magic, pure beauty. So training with Roger was pretty special. We stayed a long, long, long way from the intellect and always found our way back into the heart. He always kept it simple. He always kept it as close as he could to pointing us in that direction, in the direction of the feeling and not focusing on trying to work it out, trying to think about it. Yeah. Magical days, magical days.
Mm. So, how have you managed with your career working in schools and things to emulate that, I guess, to with your children in schools to try and bring that into what you do day to day? Because I mean, yeah, and one of the things that I've really, really, really seen and got is just how important the feeling is. I can see that, if you can find a way to get people into that feeling, out of their story, out of their head and into that feeling, that's when the magic happens. So
Yeah.
how did that change your teaching, how you were in the classroom and
Well, it's fascinating really because I didn't do anything different, or I didn't think I was doing anything different, but when we change, everything around us changes and everybody around us changes. And I think that it was the kids that made it clearer to me what was actually happening. So I remember one kid, and this is in the school I was working at the time. This one kid, he came running up to me one day and he said, "Sir," he said, "we really love you because you understand us." And then he ran off again. Okay. And I noticed, because I was a supply teacher, I wasn't stationed at the school. I was going from school to school. It's just that school in particular used me quite a lot. It was a school of about 1,000 kids, and I'd be away for a couple of days, and literally I would have like 14-year-old girls literally running up and wrapping themselves around me while I'm on the way to a classroom somewhere, saying, "Oh, sir, we missed you. We missed you. Where have you been?" uh, and it got to the stage where it was quite embarrassing, to be honest, because I'd be walking around the school, and the kids often, if there's no teacher for that lesson, then they know that they'll see someone coming along the corridor. They're all standing there waiting because every other teacher's already in their room and the kids are already inside, and these kids are standing outside. If they saw me walking along the corridor, they would cheer. Oh, please. And then the boys, more than the girls, the boys started calling me legend. "Oh, you're the legend, sir." And again, it wasn't like I was just going in there and we weren't doing anything. It was just that when we as individuals are in that beautiful feeling, and let's be honest, it's really hard to get out of it. It's really hard to stay in a bad mood or a low mood for very long, because when you have seen that it's an illusion that you are creating, it's really hard to keep that illusion going, isn't it? It's just like
to keep kidding yourself.
yeah, like, this is one of the other things I found fascinating coming back to Europe, because obviously Australia is a bit of a desert in terms of the three principles. I was there for 12 years, and it's what I would say a hard nut to crack. Sure, there are people showing the principles, but it's the country. Number one, it's so far away. Number two, the distances between places are huge anyway, because you can fit the whole of Europe into Australia, and still most people live around the edge where Europe doesn't exist. So, but having said that, what I've noticed coming back to Europe and being around the principles more is that I quite often hear people talking about giving acknowledgement to low moods and bad feelings. And I'm thinking, why are we talking about this? Why are we focused on this? Because you're talking about illusions here. Like, why would you want to focus on, oh, yes, but we all have low feelings and we all have low. Sure, we do. Of course we do, because we've still got a head. We've still got a brain and we're still thinking. But you cannot, it's physically and psychologically impossible to be in a low mood if you're in the moment. It's impossible. And there's no questions around that at all. It's physically and psychologically impossible to be in a low mood if you're present. You can feel, quite often people talk about feeling low and then noticing they're low. Well, sure. Well, just remember you're creating an illusion. It's not real. It's not real. It's not a reality. It's just the reality you're creating in that moment. How long would you like to experience it? That is entirely up to you.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes it doesn't feel like that, because I remember when I was doing some work in one of the big hospitals in Sydney, and a nurse there she said, "What about someone having a psychotic experience or a psychotic episode?" And I said, "Well, what they are experiencing in that moment is as real to them as your reality is now as you're listening to me speak. There is no difference. We are simply creating our own reality. So even though we know they're having a psychotic episode, ours is only just slightly off the psychotic episode.
Yeah, sometimes pretty close.
You know, because we're still creating our reality, aren't we?
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
still creating our reality. So it's a bit like when people talk about suffering. Now, I'm not undermining that people have suffered trauma in their lives. Of course they have. We probably, most people have to some degree. And I think they say that about 70% of the population have had some serious trauma in their life.
Mhm.
But this is the fascinating thing about memory. So we have a memory that we experience some trauma. And the example I always give, and I don't want to shock the audience, but it's a simple fact. My mother committed suicide when I was 8. My older brother was 10. My youngest brother was 3. Now, this is how obscure memory really is. I remember that we found our mother. It was nothing awful. She just looked like she was asleep. The next day, our father gathered us round and he was crying, and we were all crying. He huddled us all up and he said, "I'm sorry, boys, but your mother, she died on the way to hospital." Now, even at the age of 8, I knew that was not true. I knew intuitively she was already dead when we found her. Just how I felt. Now, I've discussed this with my older brother. He assures me that it was several weeks later and we were in the garden at our grandparents' and that our cousin told us. So I saw my cousin a year ago and I said, "Andrew, Gary says this." He said, "Dean," he said, "our parents didn't even tell us your mother was dead, so I couldn't have told you." You see what I mean?
Yeah,
So whose memory is correct?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
when somebody really sees this, they can let go of their trauma because they can see what it really is.
mm,
We can't know exactly what it is because it's a memory that we have created and we have embellished that memory over and over and over again so that it stays somewhere in our long-term memory. What actually happened is going to be an approximation, but
yeah,
it's not going to be exact. And
mm,
so we get set free and we start seeing that we're creating our reality. We get set free. Get set free from the past, from any trauma that we've experienced, because we know that it no longer exists. And if we're present, we can have a memory about it, but we don't have to be necessarily traumatized by it, which then brings trauma into a different light altogether, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. It,
Into the light of love.
yeah, it changes it entirely because I mean, my first huge insight, I'd been in this abusive relationship for all these years. I'd escaped this, literally ran away, escaped this relationship, ended up in a women's refuge, and I'd brought my kids up in this, and I was in this space of really, really hating myself for not leaving sooner, for what my kids had been through, and my kids had a fair amount of therapy, and basically I was told that they would always be damaged. They'd been damaged because of everything that they had been through, and that they could learn coping mechanisms, and that was the best that I could hope for. And then I came across the principles, and the first thing, and a little bit like when you were sort of saying, I have no idea what was said. I don't know. I don't know what it was. But what I heard was, your children cannot be damaged and neither can you. All of it, and it wasn't saying none of that happened, but it was just saying it can't damage you. That's not how it works. You can't be damaged if you. And there was almost some kind of like, if what I heard in me, what I saw was, if you choose to think about this differently, it's different. And that's what I'm hearing, what you're saying about these memories. We make up. We don't actually know what happened anymore, what in the moment.
No.
But and equally, like you say, if we are present to the moment, and I've really seen this too, that it does not matter what is going on in the moment. If we are present to the moment, we are okay. Even, in what you would describe as the most horrific thing, I was in a car accident and the car turned over. I was sat in the car and the car was turning over. And whilst this was happening, what was going through my mind was, wow, this is truly amazing, and life is really cool. And I was just perfectly okay. And so it just kind of shows it's even in the moment, even when it was happening, there was just complete peace of mind. So if we are present, and that just happened to be, I didn't do anything, it just happened that way. But if we are present to the moment, we are always okay, no matter what is happening. And if we realize, like you say, that whatever it is we're thinking is some version of something that we are making up in that moment. And if we make it up differently, we will have a totally different experience. And so, yeah, and that completely set me free in like that from a past that
Yeah.
I had dragged around with me. And then kind of over time, initially a little bit too enthusiastically and put my children off a little bit, I think. But gradually over time, with really seeing that, my children have all seen that too. And it's just like, oh yeah, we do not need to be damaged or traumatized from any of this. And I could tell you
Yeah.
some stories like you were saying with, my mom committed suicide. We can tell these things as stories that would shock people, could sound horrific, could sound and nobody would argue with you if you say, so my life's been difficult and this has happened and this has happened. But it is what I see in the freedom of this is, but you can decide that.
Mm.
You can look
Yeah.
at this and see the freedom there if you want it.
Yeah. Yeah. How beautiful is that?
Mm. It really, 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 there is something incredible with the two of us sitting here, you experiencing that with your mom at that young age and everything that happened to me and everything that happened to my children and just seeing, yeah, we can acknowledge all of those things happened, but we don't have to be, we're not broken and we don't have to create the story that we're broken if we don't want to.
No. I also, over Christmas, because I'm now back in Europe and back in the UK, I still have four surviving aunts. My father, like I think I mentioned to you, my father died in a week before I arrived from Australia in April last year. But he still has four surviving sisters. Two of them are 80 plus. So we try and get together with them whenever we can. They're a real hoot. When they get together, there's always going to be some laughs. They usually end up pulling their hankies out because they're laughing so hard they're crying. They go on holiday a couple of times a year together, go away for a weekend somewhere and have a wonderfully wild time together.
Nice.
And we learned something new, which I found fascinating. So, and I can't wait to get together with them again because obviously there might be stuff before they depart this world I'd like to know. So what I learned recently was, this is a bit of an aside really, but that we had always assumed that our mother had suffered with mental health problems because both her parents died. So my grandfather on my mother's side was quite a lot older than my grandmother. And so he died, let's say, of a heart attack. I'm not entirely sure. And then she died within a year of a broken heart. They were very much in love. But what I've discovered over Christmas was, one of my aunts just happened to mention that when my mother was 14, I'm thinking, oh my God, 14, she was a baby. When she was 14, she was a little overweight. And so they decided to put her on some kind of weight reducing drug, like a diet drug, which was amphetamine based. And it messed her literally. A growing brain should not have amphetamines in it. And it literally caused psychological problems from the age of 14 onwards. So my father married a woman that, you know, he didn't know that she was already suffering when they met, and she'd been suffering since she was a 14-year-old child. for me, I'd never thought of my parents as children, and it's been wonderful. I'd always thought, well, that's mum and dad.
Yeah.
But they were kids too. They were kids too. And she suffered. And I thought, wow, all those years before my experience of the three principles, and I was kind of like, I'd go between being upset about it and
Mm.
also being angry at her for leaving us. We were just children. Why did you leave us? And now I think, oh my God, she was already physically damaged, because we have a brain and the brain is physical. You can't be damaged psychologically, but we know that a lot of drugs do damage to the brain if it's in someone who's very young, in teenagers. Like even dope apparently will cause physical holes in the brain in young people. So when their brain is still forming, it won't form correctly. And that can cause all sorts of psychological problems for them as they grow older. But it's fascinating to look back and see my parents as children and have more understanding and more love for them, it's been a beautiful experience,
Yeah.
really.
Mm. I think one of the things that I really, really love about learning to understand myself psychologically in this way, how we work, is how much more love and compassion and connection I can have for people. Like, as I said, I'm here at the moment. I'm in my parents' house, and my dad is quite poorly at the moment, and he's actually in residential care because he's got dementia. And my mom, she's on her own here now, and it's been a strange. I've been here just over a week, and my sister lives in Spain. I've got two brothers and a sister, and two of my brothers live in two. My sister and one of my brothers live in Spain, and my other brother is in the UK. But so I don't see my sister that often, but I've been here with my sister, and it's been really, like being back in the family dynamics and here with my mom and then visiting my dad. And I've really noticed what a difference understanding in this way has made to me, being able to be around with everything that's going on with my dad, with the family, with all of that, with much, much more love and compassion. And not only for them, but for me too. The
Yeah.
whole how we can sometimes bulk against things from the past, all sorts of things. It's just been like, wow, I can be here with much more love and compassion for everybody involved in this, and including me, in a way. So the things, this is for me what really fascinates me, and exactly like you said, you can really see the benefits of people understanding this, because just ordinary things, what I'm doing now, hundreds of millions of people do this kinds of thing, go and visit family members, from going,
Yeah.
elderly parents, look after elderly parents, care for elderly parents, all of this kinds of things. And very, very often I know it can be an incredibly tough and stressful job. And what I see from my experience of this is, with more understanding of who we truly are and how we work, and an understanding of what's going on for the other people too. When I'm around people who, I mean, I know we all intrinsically we all innately know something, but when people have no understanding of this and they're quite lost, it's really fascinating to be with people like that and kind of be like, yeah, I get why you're saying that to me. I get why you're feeling like that. I get why you're angry about that. I get why you, and seeing it. So there's just so much amazingness, I think, to be had through understanding.
It makes me think of your question about, again, me working with children. How does that work? And I think that what I found was that when we are more present and when we're in that beautiful feeling, which you can't really escape because it's our natural state, right? So it's always there. You know, it's not like, oh, now I'm in the three principles and now I'm not. You know, it's like we're always present to some degree, and we're always in that good feeling state because it's our natural state. It's only temporary sojourns out of it via our intellect. That's the only thing that gets in the way. Our intellect, our personal thinking, our conditioned thinking is what only they're the only things that can really get in the way of the good feeling. And what they taught me was that when you walk into a room, and I often say this when I get the good fortune to actually work with trainee teachers, I say, look, if you love kids, you've got everything you need to be a good teacher. They're going to teach you a bunch of skills at the training college, but those skills are superfluous by comparison to your love of children, because kids know how you feel before you even put your hand on the door handle of the classroom. So if you go in there pretending I'm the boss, I'm in charge, good luck, because it's never going to work. I'm not in charge. Kids can read you like a book. But when you walk in there, and this is the magic part about the principles, as far as I can tell, and it works for adults too. It's not just kids. Remember, we're just kids in big bodies or older bodies. When you walk into a room and you do love the people that you see in front of you, and you do care about the people in front of you, they can feel it with everything in them. Everything in them. And it's the same. What made me think of this was you describing, you can see why people are experiencing what they're experiencing because of a lack of understanding. But the magic part for you and for me and for everybody else that has been exposed to this understanding is that whatever you do or wherever you go, you are going to have a wonderful, beautiful, positive, loving effect on everyone around you, even if you don't open your mouth. It's nothing. Sid always said, ignore my words. Got nothing to do with my words. It's got everything to do with who we are as individuals. And when we know, even to some degree, who we are as an individual and how amazing and magic that is, that has its effect all of the time, not some of the time, all of the time.
Yeah.
And it exudes out of us. And I always say this to facilitators, don't ever underestimate the power that you are having upon other people. You will sow seeds. Most of them you will never see germinate, but always know that wherever you go and whatever you do, you are sowing seeds of beauty and magic. It's like going out and spreading fairy dust everywhere. You know, that it just is. That's what's happening. And you do leave a trail of beauty and love and magic everywhere. And it's lasting. It's not just temporary. This is not a temporary fix. This is just like, oh my God, this is a solution to everything.
I could not agree more. And I can see from my experience in my relationship that really wasn't and was really unhealthy. I can really see, I always sort of afterwards when I was making sense of it, I always said the strongest energy will always win. And I could see that in the time. And the strongest, my energy was fear. I mean, there was fear and insecurity. Basically, in that situation, there is a ton of fear and insecurity on all sides. And so that is the energy that is going to, like you say, and even though we can't necessarily articulate it and we don't know, but you feel it, you know that's what's going on on a not an intellectual level, something else. And as soon as you are in fear, and if there's two people and there's fear and insecurity, it's a disaster waiting to happen. And exactly what you're saying, if we just move into love, doesn't matter. You don't have to, there's no hows. You don't have to, how do we do this? This is what I see with parenting and everything. It's like, okay, you don't have to know how to do it. You can't know how to do it. It's a moment to moment thing. It doesn't stand still. You have no clue. But if you just show up and the only thing I know is that I love you, that's my energy. That's my strong energy. The only thing I know is I love you.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in my relationship. I've seen it in the relationship with all of my kids. And that's these days here, it's literally like, oh, okay, yeah, all I need to know. I don't need to solve this problem. I don't need to solve the problem that my dad's in a home. I can't. All I need to do is just right. All I know is that I love you, and that's it. And with that energy, showing up with that energy, and that's what I hear you describing, and is I can see. I used to do sewing classes for many years. I did adult education and I did sewing classes. And when the first day I ever showed up, I'd never been in a class. I had no clue. I was good at sewing, and someone asked me if I would do it. But what I can see, the reason that that worked was because of my love of what I was doing. And I wanted the people, when I went there, these people showed up because they wanted to learn this thing. And I had so much passion and love for what it was. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, it'll be amazing if you can do this. So there was just like, and that it is, isn't it? It's that energy. When we show up with that energy, magic happens.
Yeah. Shall I tell you another story from school?
Please do. Please do.
Okay, so one day the kids, I think they were probably 13, 14, they had to type up an essay. So we went to the library and they've got a whole bank of computers. And I'm walking around the kids, seeing everyone's okay. Anybody needs any help? Now, two little girls cornered me um, around the end bank, and they said, "Oh, sir, it's our birthday tomorrow." I said, "Well, both of you?" "Yeah, we were born on the same day." And I said, "Oh, well, happy birthday for tomorrow." And they said, "Yeah, but what are you going to buy us?" And I said, girls, I said, I'm a school teacher. I said, if I was to buy every student in this school a present, I'd be broke. "I know. We won't tell anyone, just us." I'm thinking, oh God, I'm such a sucker. So I remember going home and I had to stop to get some groceries. So I pulled into the supermarket, and I'm not kidding you. I literally cracked a sweat. Talk about the intellect. I literally cracked a sweat thinking, should I or shouldn't I? And I think I did buy a couple of something really simple, But this is what happened. And this is what I mean about kids can be our teachers. Everyone can be our teachers. If we're listening, if we're present, we see beauty and magic, and then we gain so much. So I get home, and the first thing I do is I just sat down on the couch, and I just suddenly started to cry from nowhere, like the laughing, the crying just started. And what went through my mind was, these children, like, what do we do when we want to show somebody we love them, our family and friends? We buy them a card and we buy them a present. That's our way of showing we love. And I thought, all of these kids, all they really wanted was, you say you love us, show us. I thought, that's all they're asking me to do, is show them. And the next thing that went through my mind was really bizarre, because I was brought up as a Christian and then I became a Buddhist later in life. Now, I remembered from Sunday school stories from the Bible, and the whole story of Jesus being crucified came to me in this moment, and where he says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And I suddenly realized in that moment, in a flash, that he was not talking about being crucified. He was actually talking about that he had spread a message of love, and even his disciples were going to get it wrong. Hence all of the different sects of Christianity and how they spread out and how they argue with each other and how they even kill each other about it. Like, what's that got to do with love?
Yeah.
And then, which was pretty incredible. And then the next thing that I saw in my mind is, if you set up a set of dominoes and then you flick the end one and then they just all
Ping, 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 ping.
down. Yeah, they all ping down. And I suddenly realized in that moment, I don't know why these were all connected, but I guess it's just like when you see something, you see everything.
Mm.
And I suddenly realized that if I was psychologically innocent, and so was everybody else in my entire life. Therefore, all of the people that had ever caused me harm or done me an injustice were all just pung, pung, pung. They were all just falling over and thinking they were all psychologically innocent. Not some of them, not just the ones that I prefer. All of them were doing the best they can given their in the moment thinking. And it was such a beautiful feeling of release again, to be set free from the past, to be set free from holding grudges and bad memories. And
Mm.
yeah, so many good stories from school. So many kids are just so close to the source. It's lovely.
It's beautiful how it is everywhere in that sense, though, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
like, yeah,
it
when
is
you
everywhere you
begin,
go.
yeah, when you begin to see it, you see, oh, it's here too. It's here
Yeah,
too. It's
yeah,
here too. And to
yeah,
see that innocence, like you say, yeah, we're all going to get it wrong.
yeah.
That's it. We just are, aren't we? And it is forgiveness all round, I think. Forgiveness for ourselves, forgiveness
Ourselves.
for others, forgiveness.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that the one thing, and I think we may have discussed this in Spain, the one thing that has really struck me in the last couple of years is our infinite capacity for love and kindness, to give, because it costs nothing to give. Sometimes we can give things physically, financially, but to give love is costs nothing. And there isn't, I was thinking this again, and this is a thought that often occurs to me. You cannot spoil, and I've said this about children, you cannot spoil a child with too much love. You cannot spoil anyone with too much love. It's impossible. It's impossible. Because the only thing that anyone really wants is to be in that space of love. And okay, sometimes we get confused and we think it's coming from the outside rather than from the inside, but we have this infinite capacity to share it. So what's stopping us? Nothing. It's up to us. And the more, and Sid always said this, the more that we do that, the more comes back. And it's not like you're doing it because you want more back, but that's what happens anyway. It's just like a boomerang. It just keeps coming back.
Natural byproduct, yeah. I
Yeah.
can see we are either coming from love or coming from fear. And it is like if we
Mm.
could just come from love. I mean, you talked about the message of Jesus, and to me, his message was just come from love, no matter what. Even here, just come from love. Even here, just come from love. They'll do this, just come from love. This will happen. Just be love, just love. And it is,
Yeah.
yeah, that is the difference that makes the difference. And yet our head says, well, you can't come from love here. And then you
That's
can't be loving in those circumstances. And it's like,
no, that's right.
yeah, we can. We
We
can.
can. That's right. And I think you may have found this also. I remember that quite often people will start talking about, well, what about war zones? And I
Yeah.
said, well, that's an interesting one. Let me tell you a story. I met a beautiful young woman from Ukraine. She was at a London conference, and she said to me, Dean, she said, I was lying when the rockets come in, they get usually shot out of the sky, so they don't actually hit the buildings. She said, but when they come in, when they explode in the air, they still make the house shake and the windows shake, and you don't know whether anything's going to fall on the house. She said, I was lying under the bed with my 8-year-old daughter, and the explosions were happening and everything was shaking. And I knew in that moment that even if we died now, everything would be okay. And I thought that is so powerful.
Mm.
That is so powerful. She has seen it so deeply that she knows that she has let go of the fear of death, which I think happens to most people when they come across the principles. But even in the face of extreme adversity, she could see that she would be okay. They would be okay. I thought, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So, so powerful.
Yeah.
Because I think people do get unstuck sometimes when they think about psychological innocence, and they think, how can, what about war zones? What about pedophiles? What about rapists? Well, we're not saying they're innocent of their crime. We're not saying war is good or right, but it is still down to us how we end up responding to the circumstances we end up finding ourselves in. And okay, it's easy for me and you perhaps to sit here just chatting in relative safety to say that. But this is like you said earlier, this is something so powerful that even when we are in extreme circumstances, when we're present, we can hold to our innate health.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing that will ever carry
Mm.
us through. And it's the only thing that can set us free from our fear of those things. The only thing.
And that there are too many like that lady that you just spoke of, and your experiences, the experiences you've shared here, experiences I've shared, and experiences so many other people have shared. There is so much lived experience to say that there is something here. And I do think each one of us has to have our own insight and experience to know it. There's no point knowing that with our head. You have to have some kind of lived experience of it. That will be the only thing that will truly teach you this, which is
Yeah.
why we're having these conversations, to kind of open people up to that. But once you do have a lived experience of it, you do see, yeah, even here, even here, wherever here is, whatever is going on, yeah, this doesn't, what we are talking about, what we are pointing to, yeah, it does work on a beautiful sunny day when you're at the park, but it also works when you're hiding under a bed in a war zone or any circumstances for any reason. And I definitely have my own lived experience of seeing, if we go inside and ask the question, am I okay even here? There is never a moment ever when, in my own experience, that is something I actually do. And I have yet to find a moment when I actually go inside and ask that question that it hasn't been a yes, you are okay. And okay, you might, how we would describe that, but like okay, even if I lose my life, okay, even if somebody really dear to me loses their life in this. Yes, there is an okayness underpinning this. And I guess this conversation, the principles, everything we're doing is pointing people to the possibility of that, because there is real freedom in that.
Yeah. And also to something we haven't touched on, even though I did mention it, but fun. That I love what Bill Pettit says about this. Bill Pettit says that if he hasn't laughed by midday, he goes and watches some comedy because he says there's something wrong. There's something wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that living in that space of love allows us to be in a more light-hearted state and see the funny side of life and see the comic element in all aspects of life.
Mm.
Because something occurred to me this morning, which was years ago when I was first training to be a Buddhist. I was listening to a series of lectures, and in one of the earliest lectures I listened to, the founder of this Buddhist movement said, as you study Buddhism day by day, week by week, month by month, and year by year, if you are not getting happier, you're getting something wrong. And I think he said that because he met, when he came back from India in the 60s, I think he kept meeting a lot of, and this is really funny. This is how Roger Mills described me. When I first met Dean, he was a rather serious Buddhist.
All right.
I don't remember being a rather serious Buddhist. There you go.
Life is definitely about having fun. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Dean, I could keep speaking to you forever and ever and ever, but
Sure, we will get plenty more opportunities in the future.
I am sure too. This absolutely will not be the last conversation we have. That has been so beautiful. Thank you so much. If people want to reach out
Thank
to you
you.
or contact you, where can they do that?
Well, at the moment, my website is in transition from Australia to the UK, so it can still be accessed at Three Principles, and that's using the letters, not the number, threeprinciplestraining.com.
Mm.
My email address is my name without the hyphen, so Dean Rees-Evans at gmail.com. And if you want to listen to me talk even more, you can go onto YouTube and search me, and there's a few videos out there of me talking about this, that, and the other.
Oh, cool, cool. Well, I will put that information in the show notes, but thank you so, so much for
Pleasure, Debs.
finding the time to do this. It's been amazing. I've really, really, really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Me too. My pleasure.